Akram, let's start with the archive. I mean, the popular notion of an archive would be that it is a place where you gather, where you collect objects, where they are preserved. It's a place for indexing, cataloging, ordering. And I would like you to elaborate a bit on your notion of an archive, because you announce at the beginning of the film that it is the interpretation of an archive, where an archive is performed and recorded. Yeah.
I think the archive, in my opinion, is all that is surrounding us. So the landscape is an archive too. Mm-hmm. In this case, it's an archive of a profession, work, accumulation of work in the same place. And therefore it could, for me, it could be like a great opportunity to study the practice of a person, and in this case an image maker, like me also. So we are both image makers, and we belong to different traditions. It's an opportunity for me to, like when you are a photographer and you do work, your work results in images that we call documents. If you are a shoemaker, your work results in making shoes. So they are used and maybe thrown away at the end. But when you are a photographer, after 50 years or 60 years, you accumulate this body of work that is either thrown away after you die or inherited by another photographer, or in this case, belongs to the Arab Image Foundation. So what can you do with all of this except studying it? In my opinion, an archive of photographs is not only celluloid or not only silver particles on gelatin or glass or paper. It's so many other things, some of which we know and some of which we don't. And I tried to expand a little bit the notion of what a photograph is in this film, and what a collection of or a repository of images can be in the case of a photographer, but also today on YouTube or Facebook or Instagrams are totally changing our nature, our conception of images and how we consume them and how we use them. So describing an archive is something, interpreting it is something else, performing it is something else, and all sorts of other things, other gestures that one may come up with in relationship to an existing archive. So there's really, the opportunities are infinite in a way.
This would mean that the archive does not exist in itself, for itself, but it has to be generated or reinterpreted in order to bring to light something.
The archive is a parallel life, in my opinion. It's a parallel life. It changes when other lives change as well. Like every time I see, for example, Majid Al-Rumi, the Lebanese singer, singing in front of Hosni Mubarak and his generals, it is the same. It's the same film. It's the same document, but it means something else when he's in jail, for example. And nobody knows. Maybe he's going to be back. I don't know. It will keep on meaning something else. When you have a photograph of when you keep a photograph of your mother, and she is alive, is something. When you keep her photograph when she's not anymore alive, is something else. Mm-hmm. So the mere fact that there's something in one life changes, it changes automatically, or it reflects something. So I like to believe that the archive has a life on its own. And I like to try to interpret this or have connections to it, at least.
And one of the main features of your film is that you are putting on display the equipment, the technical equipment for making images, recording images, or projecting images. It's like an exhibition of all these tools and machines, and perhaps, I don't know, at a certain point, it has an aspect of how should I call it? I mean, of something like, it's not only a journey through the times, but it has a very, it has a media archaeological aspect, or how would you describe it?
Definitely, in my practice, I have a relationship to archaeology as a practice. I'm not an archaeologist, but also with history as well. I'm not a historian, but I do a kind of writing. I'm not an archaeologist, but I have archaeological interest and gestures in places where archaeology doesn't perform itself. So, working on this archive is considering this studio as an archaeological site. And it started when, in 1999, when I met Madani and I started moving his archive of photographs and documents to the Arab Image Foundation. It took like 10 years or 8 to 10 years to move most of the archive, and while I was moving it, I was realizing that all that surrounds pictures is as important as pictures themselves. So his tools, his cameras, his closets, but you cannot move a closet to the archive of the Arab Image Foundation. And here I started seeing the limits of our definition of what photography is, what preservation is, because with more like going into specificities or like being specialized has negative implications on how we could see. Like ideally, I would preserve the whole studio in its place where it is, but also I do not want to kill it and kill life in it and transform it into a museum. So you keep on navigating between different gestures. So part of it is at the Arab Image Foundation, parts of it stayed in the studio, because he still goes to the studio, and I did not want to kill the studio also. So we try to. Me and the foundation, we keep on discussing what to do, but definitely I think the equipment are an important part of what the archive is, but also the archive is a set of transactions that have no material presence. So it's you bring a camera to the studio wanting to sell it, it stays in the studio for a year, 2 years, and then the studio sells it to as a second-hand camera to someone else. This is a transaction that passes through the studio, but nothing stays in it. So I wanted to really communicate the idea of this studio as a place of all transactions, of course theater as well. Yeah, but going to the archaeologies, archaeology for me means like I've studied the documents, I've studied the images, I have my own interpretation of